Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this on the World Wide Web. Jeremy Geelan here for SYS-CON TV with our inaugural Rich Internet Applications Power Panel. As ever, let's find out who's here with me to talk about RIA and to talk about Ajax and to talk about Zool, things that we will get onto shortly. But starting with Charles Feisel, who is director with Round Arch. He'll tell us about that in a moment. Roger Struckhoff, we know, our SYS-CON Bureau Chief from the West Coast. Thank you for flying in, Roger, for this our panel. Rob Gonda, on my left, CTO of iChameleon Group. He'll tell us a little about that in a moment. Let us please convene the first ever SYS-CON TV Power Panel on rich Internet applications. Charles, perhaps you could just place us, tell us who you are. Why have we invited you to this?
My name is Charles Feisel. I work for Round Arch. We're a user experience design strategy firm. We focus on technology consulting. Round Arch has a group of consultants that are focused on all of the different technologies out there, whether they're NexoWeb, Laszlo, Macromedia Flex, Ajax, all of these different technologies that allow the person experiencing the website to move from a multiple page experience to a single page user experience. That's one of the focuses at Round Arch. Going back over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been working with companies like Laszlo, one of the pioneers in the firm. I was their financial services evangelist and brought to market some of the first financial services applications in the RA space.
Okay. Roger, we know. Rob, I'm going to ask, if I may, introduce yourself, sir.
Sure. My name is Rob Gonda. I'm CTO for iChameleon Group. We're a development interactive company based in Florida with offices in LA and London. And we are basically not Laszlo. We're more a Macromedia house. We develop enterprise applications using mostly ColdFusion. And we develop rich internet media and applications using most Flash and Flex.
Okay. Of course, he said Macromedia, what Rob meant. He's an Adobe shop.
Adobe shop. Excusez-moi.
Charles, if I may, I would like... You are a man of parts, sir. That's not wrong. You're here. We have a developer extraordinary, entrepreneurial. We have an entrepreneur extraordinary. Yes, part of your background. A nose for the entrepreneurial. And yet here we are on the RIA Power Panel, which suggests to me that there's money to be had. It suggests to me, because Rob's here too, that there's almost a renaissance going on maybe in developers, and this is the next point of light around which we're going to assemble. But I know none of these things, so let's test them out if we may. You mentioned moving from many pages. Should we call this beyond the page? Is that really what RIA is all about? Beyond the page? Is it that simple?
I think in short it is that simple. It's really bringing a multiple page linear architecture into a three-dimensional single page user experience where you can have multiple applications running concurrent. You can have video, you can have a music clip, you can have a credit card application, you can have all of these, not to say that that would be a good user experience, but what I'm saying is that you can have multiple applications running concurrently within one user experience.
Right. Now the importance of this, the reason we hammer away at this, right at the top of this panel, is that, come on, let's be clear about it. People are hearing a lot about rich internet applications. They're hearing a lot about, what was it called? Rich web. Perhaps we can think about that a little later. And we're always going to have that same thing. People say, what does that actually mean? Like, how's that different? Like, why won't these guys just level with me what it all means? Rob, is that true? Do you think that one has a duty of care as a developer, as a technologist, also to be an evangelist? Or is that up to organizations like SYS-CON Media and SYS-CON TV and to hell with it, just get on with it? And I don't mean to personal view. You write for us, so you absolutely have been an exponent.
But developers have to adapt to this. You call it renaissance. It's really, we have to get away from the traditional web, and we have to develop to what the barrier was broken down from web applications to desktop applications, and we're trying to deliver more for desktop applications through the browser. That's done with either Flash, Flex, Ajax, Laszlo. And developers will have to actually start migrating and developing the web services, SLA, or the backend to actually work with any different fronts.
Right, now what interests me, you see, on behalf of viewers watching this, you say, we need to, and I'm like crying out, I'm sure some of them, who's we? Who's we? Who does he mean, developers? Does he mean us? I'm going to bring in Roger at this point because Roger is not cast as our man of the people, but he has to circulate in Silicon Valley with users, as well as with the guys creating the future. Roger, what are users saying about RIA? Are they saying anything?
Actually, the question I'd like to ask our two panelists here, is that a proper term? I think RIA is a term that we've had around, 3 or 4 years now, something of that. And again, it's not something you can buy. It doesn't describe, I don't think, anything in particular. What do you guys actually think of that term and its relevance? And if you have, is there a better term to use, or should we, stay away from the terms and just jump down into what needs to be delivered in the application?
Is that a good question, Charles? Is that a fair question?
I think one of the points I made earlier with you is that Richardson Applications, the term has actually hampered the development of this new web, some people are calling it Web 2.0, the next generation of the Internet. I think that some people are, AJAX actually is sort of like the banner under which RAs are currently being described, and yet if you go to Gartner, they'll talk about rich Internet applications, and they'll talk about underneath that your .NET class, your JavaScript class under which AJAX falls, your Java class, all of these different areas of technology which really subsume into the rich Internet application space. But the answer to your question is yes. Rich Internet applications as a term have created problems in terms of the development cycle of RA-based websites.
And what's the problem? Let's unpack that. What's the problem? I mean, I'm speaking now for behalf again of people who
the problem is
it's not a good term because it's boring.
Well, I think there's a few reasons. I think historically the whole RA movement came out after the dot-com meltdown. Technology folks as well as marketing folks had been promised all kinds of renaissance technologies during 1998, 97, into 99 that did not pan out. I remember back in actually it was 2002, end of 2001, beginning of 2002, very few people would take meetings with us regarding rich Internet applications. Folks like JP Morgan did because I had worked with them for 8 years. Folks at Capital One did because I knew all the people running the company.
So your pedigree had to be in order, then it's okay, this is the next thing.
But the problem is not, it's the word applications, because really this is as much about marketing as anything else. This is as much about brand as anything else. This is as much about information architecture and user experience. The problem is rich Internet applications got sidelined into just technology. This is not just technology.
Okay, interesting. Now we're going to come back to that, I know. Rob, let's grasp that one. Charles is saying that AJAX has kind of become a galvanizing point. Is it just because it's an easier name? Because more people knew JavaScript? What is it? It's true. Let's just do that first. Is it true? AJAX is going like ballistic, right?
AJAX is definitely the buzzword du jour. It's what everybody's talking about right now. It's Web 2.0 and AJAX.
Right.
Not that much REAs.
Right.
And AJAX is not new. Actually, web services are not new. They've been around for a while.
And suffer from the same problem. The term may be hampering the concept.
Yeah, definitely. AJAX, all it is really is just combination of some JavaScript, some XML to create actually remote calls and give a user a better experience. That's all. But ever since actually the big ones like Google starts using it for Gmail or for Google Maps, all the big ones actually are following. Bill Gates actually just announced on the CES that Microsoft is actually revolutionizing a new live era. Well, I have a little bit good news for Bill. He's actually trying to catch up with Google.
That's okay.
It's definitely okay.
That's okay.
You might know that at the CES last
But again,
week,
a lot of this is marketing. I mean, when you look at Laszlo, their mapping capabilities for La Quinta Hotel predates Google Maps by a year and a half.
You've stolen the question from my mouth, which is this, that I happen to know that you were connected to some of this stuff long before it was called AJAX. So, question to you both, really. I think you were connected to it, Rob, before it was called Let's date when it was called AJAX. I believe we're talking very recent. We're talking Adaptive Path. We're talking
Jesse.
So we're talking last year.
last year.
Which is extraordinary. Let's go on to then when it really started. Let's also do the same thing with RIA. It's the RIA panel, for God's sake. When did it come? I think maybe March 2002 out of Macromedia.
March 2002, Macromedia released a white paper, and that was, they claimed, the first time the RIA term was used to define this revolution.
Right.
Before that,
what Charles was saying,
yeah, before
he was doing it.
It was doing it. It was called,
actually, when you look back to December 1999, formerly I had worked with Circle.com, which became Euro RCG. We had built Mini USA, the world award-winning site, was built using Java, built using ActionScript, and it is now ported over to Flex. But basically, nothing has changed except for porting it over to Flex.
Charles, what did you call it? What did you call it?
We called it Rich Web. We called
what
it
strong term.
Period.
What a term that could have transformed us.
But back then, you could build a Mini and one continuous user experience, one continuous page. It's the same thing now in Macromedia Flex.
So what happened in between? Did we get lost?
Technology got developed that allowed us to define and to build these applications more quickly. Period. Ajax is the aggregation of technologies that are existing in the marketplace already. It's not like all of a sudden, it was created. These are technologies that were already there.
It was invented out of whole cloth. And both Rob and Charles, you're talking about the user experience. I keep hearing that. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about that, are the companies that are doing this trying to improve, enhance, maximize, optimize the user experience? Are they doing this because their customers are telling them to, or because they're trying to maintain the competitive advantage?
What are the drivers?
Or are they becoming more efficient? What are really the drivers behind this user experience creation going on?
If you look at one of Adobe, I keep slipping into the Macromedia. If you look at what Adobe has done with TJX, the single page checkout, that's been around for about a year now. Now, it sort of begs the question, if you can keep a customer engaged in a single page checkout, why wouldn't you? Why would you put a customer through a 6-7 page checkout?
Right.
And yet when we talk today to some of the major retailers, they are still fearful of making that jump. So to that end, in chatting with David Temkin this morning, the founder of Laszlo, we were chatting about some of the websites that are coming out right now for some of the startup companies, that their websites are really going to be the ones that are going to push the envelope in terms of user experience. Some of the larger companies right now, as you know, marketing is trying to run the ship, technology is trying to run the ship. So companies where there's a greater ecosystem, a greater synergy between marketing and technology, certainly are going to have a greater ability to be nimble and to create these new Web 2.0 user experiences.
Rob?
Those companies actually are creating Web 2.0 experiences, and Web 2.0 is not only a single page checkout. What it does,
but a good example, because
I'm just using that as a simple example.
Yeah, they can relate to that, but a good example is actually making them believe, mimicking the desktop functionality through the browser. I mean, allowing them to actually open new windows, allowing them to right click to actually get the specific properties for something. I mean, really the Web 2.0 and the better user experience, what it does, it allows the user to intuitively just manage a page or a checkout just like if it was any other desktop application.
Right. So let me do this then. Let me just try and cut through all this. We're now banning the term, for us, Web 2.0. Okay? Does that mean that there was a Web 1.0, whatever happened to Web 1.5? Let's not get into that. Let's say that there's a consensus now around the notion that Web 2.0 is a useful concept. Seems to be something new that is definable. You've just defined some of its characteristics. We're also saying that we've got this term that's brought us here today, that's brought our viewers here, RIA, Rich Internet Applications, that may or may not have served its useful life now. I wish it had been Rich Web, but that's just my wordman's ear saying, wow, that sounds good. What is Rich? It begs the question, I want to know, what's Rich Web? I don't want to know.
Right, an application, the phrase, the term, applications alienated the business drivers within major organizations.
So we're nailing down some things here that maybe people either haven't thought about or they've thought about, and we're helping articulate them. And one of the things we try and do on the Power Panels is to do a bit of the thought work for people, a bit of the legwork for people, so that if they're developers sitting in an organization, not so much if they're users, this is just informative, but if they're developers sitting with their organization and some of these issues are being like dumped on them, they can become, we hope, a little bit more articulate, a little bit more sensitized as to the history of some of this and some of the arguments, some of the business case arguments. So they can say, yeah, you've been reading the Wall Street Journal. They didn't tell you that thing about RIA. You know, there are a few issues with it. But let me explain it to you as follows and gain more respect within the organization, more traction for what they really want to do, which is write this amazing code for these better user experiences. Let's just ponder that. We'll dissect it more. I just want us to take a break while we play this brief commercial, and then we'll be back at the RIA Power Panel. So here we are again, RIA Power Panel, and unusually one of the first things we seem to be doing is unpacking RIA and perhaps thinking that we could have called this the Rich Webb Power Panel. Who knows? I want to just tackle the Ajax issue so that one is dealt with. Should this really be the Ajax Power Panel? Now I hear what Charles is saying, it's Ajax that's getting all the traction. He's dropping these names like Laszlo and whatever. But Rob, this is really the Ajax Power Panel, right? And the rest of this is just history. Is that right?
Actually, no. I disagree.
I thought I had cracked.
Ajax definitely plays a big part on RIAs, but it's definitely not the only one.
So that is part of our message. It is not happenstantial that you're looking at the RIA Power Panel, not the Ajax Panel.
Yeah.
Correct, Charles?
Correct.
You played a little part in that, it should be said, to anybody who follows these things. Charles was somebody who reached out to SYS-CON and reminded us not to get bogged down in subsets when there was this lovely superset called RIA, for better or for worse.
Right.
And I thank you for that, and I'd like to think the viewers thank you for that.
There's a suite of technologies or approaches that probably exist under this umbrella, and at some level in organizations they're going to say, well, what's our RIA, or we should do an RIA here.
Or even more, because they are going to say, what is Ajax?
You know, let's say that happens.
That's not the problem,
right?
but that's the truth.
Well,
so can we now help people definitely go,
right.
I'm glad you asked,
right.
Ajax is a subset of this movement, really, towards Rich Webb.
Different approaches of solving the problem, and you know, what are the advantages of taking the different approaches to solving the problem? Is there one size fits all? Is it a matter of philosophy, or just a matter of practicality?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why Ajax is actually the biggest movement among the RIA. It's because to actually do it through other methods, I mean, Ajax can be adopted using pretty much any programming language. Ajax can be adopted using PHP, Ruby, ColdFusion, .NET, Java, you name it. So we have a larger variety and larger population of programmers who can actually program and use Ajax. Now if you go to Flash remoting, then you need a Flash scripter or programmer. Or if you go to Flex 2.0, or actually Flex 1.5, like the Google Yahoo Maps are developed right now, then you need Flex scripters. Laszlo, you need them to actually know Laszlo.
Well, that's...
So are you saying that this is good or bad? You're just mapping. I know you're mapping.
Hold on. Let's just think, when he said you need to know Laszlo, Laszlo simply is Java communicating with XML. Truly, if you really want to strip it down to
Java or
bottom line,
JavaScript?
Laszlo is an Ajax, technology.
JavaScript, not Java.
You can use JavaScript, you can use Java.
Oh, you really can?
Yes, you can.
Oh, you can.
Okay, because that's another question that we need to get on to.
Because you have the Java family, you have the JavaScript family.
Okay. Well, maybe look, can we just jump right into that? Because technology and technology journalism can often, both of them I think, head for the path of least resistance. One of the things that technology journalists can do, not of course Roger and myself ever, but one could possibly be forgiven for thinking, so is this the death of Java? You're saying what I'm hearing is
or Java?
Java. That's why I'm picking up on what Charles is saying. Is Ajax the death of Java? Question mark, Charles.
I think that if you look at how deeply embedded, and you probably could answer this better, but when you look at how deeply Java is embedded into the development programs at major banks, major organizations, I don't see it dying quickly.
I mean, Ajax is not going to happen on Wall Street, Rob.
Ajax is happening on Wall Street.
Ajax is happening on Wall Street. Java is still the #1 language, period. I mean, even Oracle is partnering with Java actually to compete with SAP.
Enterprise applications.
Yes.
Right. You need to qualify it like that. Number one language in enterprise applications. Let's not go beyond that, or we'll get into all sorts of trouble.
But Java, I mean, Ajax will not replace Java. Ajax is just an interface to communicate with the browser. Java goes way beyond that.
When you look at all of these technologies, what are you doing? You're creating a presentation layer. That's what you're doing here. With all of these technologies, you're allowing the user to have a more cinematic, interactive experience. Period. You know, it's not brain surgery. It's really about bringing all of these different technologies and bringing them to bear productively in an appropriate setting for your customer. For example, there are certain technologies in the RA space that we're bringing to the United States Air Force. There are certain technologies that we're bringing to Bear Stearns. There are certain technologies that we're discussing with folks at Amex. You know, so for us, we have determined it's very important for our folks to be trained on NexaWeb, Laszlo, Adobe Flex, and Ajax.
Right.
Because
it's a platform neutral thing.
It has to be.
Right.
It has to be. Otherwise, you know, you can't really do the due diligence that you need for your customer, and that's really what we're about. You can't really call yourself a user experience company and focus in on just one.
But the choice of the technology for the particular user experience, and is it a matter of philosophy? No. Is it a matter
or just developers? Is it a matter of the developer pool that you have?
Well, at this one bank that we're doing work right now, there are huge BEA shop.
Right.
If you go to BEA, BEA is all about Ajax.
Okay.
I mean, if you go to the DevCon site on BEA and put in rich internet applications, the only thing that will come up is Ajax. You'll never get anything about Laszlo, Macromedia Flex, nothing.
Right.
So it depends. And if you look at SAP has OEM'd Macromedia Flex into their offering right now.
Right.
So that's when you.
But from what I'm hearing, Charles, the user, the customer, needn't be as concerned by that as some of these other proprietary issues, because what you're saying is it works damn well, whether it's PHP or so. That is just back-end operational factors, some happenstance.
And presentation layer as well. I mean, you can present it using HTML, dynamic HTML and JavaScript, or you can present it using a front-end Swift, which is either Laszlo or Flash or Flex, or starting next year, you will probably be able to present it using XAML, which is the new Microsoft application layer.
Right. Let me ask you this question then. Do we yet have, these little metrics that one has, looking at the anthropology, if you like, of technology? Do we yet have RAA developers? Is there such a term? Would it be useful?
Actually, yeah, we have had RAA developers.
And the second part of that is, what would you then, if you were interviewing them, how would you correlate this claim to be an RA developer with their skill set?
Christoph Conrath, who's the evangelist at Adobe, he and I used to work together at Laszlo, and I remember we were presenting to a large bank here in town, and we couldn't get anyone to have a meeting with us. A couple months ago, out in California, there were over 2,000 developers at Macromedia's developers conference, and every one of the Flex sessions, dozens of Flex sessions, were completely sold out. We're completely full. So in terms of, do we have developers out there? I think that, that folks love this.
Right. No, that wasn't so much the question. It was, I'm just trying to get ahead of developers love being employed. And one of the questions we find through the 17 magazines, is constantly, how do I position myself? That's one of the things you're coming to our magazines or you're coming to this site for. I mean, let's be blunt. How to position yourself so that you are marketable. And one of the questions is, what should I call myself? So that was really my thought there, is it better for them to do, like the old days of CVs where people claimed all these IT skills that they didn't possess. And it was just self-defeating. Because the first one you picked and asked them about, they said, when I said Quark, what I meant was, and you said, oh, please. Now, are we going to get the same problem here that people say, oh, whatever, look, I'm RA, I mean, I have PHP, I'll do it in anything you like, Laszlo, yep, I know them all. So I'm wondering if there's a way around that, so you really get the best developers. How does that work? What do I do if I'm a developer, other than lie and fib? How do you interview people?
We actually, at iChameleon, we mainly use Adobe Shop. So when we interview people, we ask them if they know Flash, if they can script in Flash.
Right.
If they know all the AS 2.0, maybe even the AS 3.0, which is an alpha right now, ActionScript 3.0. And most of the times, actually, we get really good scripters. I just don't call it programmers because it's a personal thing. I mean,
we'll leave that. Just
we'll leave that there.
Do not write to me about that. He believes that scripters Flash go together. We'll get onto that.
No, there are some. Anyway, you interview them and you see if they can actually, if they dominate the Flash scripting, if they dominate Flash communication server, video integration.
Dominate meaning they're completely at ease. You know they know their stuff.
Yeah, actually, I mean you can ask them a few simple questions and you'll get a feeling if they know everything about the REAs and how to integrate all the different components into one presentation layer.
And now, Charles, you mentioned Christoph. Now, he's one of the best presenters I've ever seen. I've watched him, if we spin back like 2 years to our own shows. He came and spoke at Web Services Edge. And, of course, he's rehearsing this argument that we're now giving names to, rehearsing the argument that, can you believe what we're putting up with on this web thing that we invented? It has all this potential, and we're just ignoring it. And I have watched just a group of pretty hardened, I think, skeptics, free thinkers, if you like, just eat out of his hand because it seems so self-evident what he's saying. And Macromedia, now Adobe, played into that so strongly. You say you're an Adobe shop. I can completely relate to why people are trusting Adobe if it's got pilots like Christoph Conrad and many, many others. Thought then, Laszlo, how should I have caught up with Laszlo and have failed? What's happened there? Is it just me in too limited background? You were talking about Laszlo Mail off air. Is that something we should be sending people to become familiar with? And are you shocked that I even say they might not be? Tell us.
I would like to answer that question, but I would like to just go back to the question that you asked Rob, because really, again, going back to one of the things I said when we first got, this is not just about technology, because you can have the best programmer in the world, but unless they have the ability to think three-dimensionally as opposed to in a linear way, that website is going to be it's not going to be improved user experience. I've actually seen some engineers develop in RA technology, whether it be Laszlo or Flex, page-based user experiences because they don't get it. Because they don't get it. But there are another set of problems with the Web 2.0. What are the visual cues to keep people engaged so that they know they're to remain? People are used to going through a website and a page-based experience.
What a good question.
So people need to have the creative design and needs to be much more closely aligned with the technology. So it's our contention that technology and creative design are probably more closely aligned now in the RA space than ever before. It's a much more aligned ecosystem for development.
Now, does that not make perfect sense then with the Adobe acquisition? If people have been wondering what drove that, there is the answer from Charles Feisel in one sentence. It is the perfect acquisition at this exact time, and one has to take one's hat off to all the people on both sides who saw that synergy. Yes, I mean, you're an Adobe shop, but you don't carry any brief. I don't know, maybe an Adobe shareholder, what do I know? But you can validate that as a complete third party.
Adobe and Macromedia, actually, they're perfect merger. I mean, what Adobe will be able to do now to this REA revolution should be amazing.
See, I'm getting nervous when you say revolution. I don't mean to be rude. It's this thing of, I'm thinking that one of the things Charles has done is kind of calmed us down a bit. A bit like, having to be in charge of the Fed, and sometimes you just have to talk the market down. And what I'm thinking, don't really put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing is sort of, if this hadn't have just been terms and hype and whatever, we would be there already. Absolutely. You're making me feel we've wasted years. I hate that.
But again, there's reasons why. We came out of the dot-com meltdown. We came out of a huge cynicism in the technology and marketing areas. Also, we know, marketing folks know that technology has been siloed, and and there has not been the close alignment between marketing. I mean, I know Fortune 20 banks right now where marketing is way over there, technology is way over there, and you basically need, an intermediary to get them to put on, both hats. And I think right now when you see some of the banks out there, especially like some of our clients, their technology people are real savvy marketeers, and their marketeers are real savvy technologists. So that is allowing people to move in this direction. However, I still believe that some of the startups who are not held back by the constraints of an existing infrastructure are going to have a greater ability to build very, very effective websites. I mean, for example, perfect example, if you were to go to Laszlo's site and look at their Amazon store, their Amazon Music Store demo, my God, it's mind-boggling to me that Amazon has not deployed this demo in real time.
Right.
Because it is so much better than anything that they have going on right now.
My God, look, there's a call to action to Amazon just to stop all the people now watching this power panel from whizzing off to the Laszlo site and trying the demo at Amazon.com. Please, I beg, stay with you, just watch this next commercial. Sorry, I rudely interrupted you, Charles, but that was important. So, Amazon, an amazing demo on the Laszlo site. And people should go to that. I'm just
I think so, and I think also, I'm not just here to talk about Laszlo. I mean, you look at NexoWeb, some of the powerful trading applications that they have developed for their customers. I mean, NexoWeb, you talk about Ajax at an event that I put together here in New York a few weeks ago. We had Coach Wee, the founder of NexoWeb, and he showed a Ajax application that he built in 1996, which some people consider to be the first Ajax application. So right now they're doing some amazing real-time trading applications with the second largest Japanese bank in the world, where 1,800 traders are getting through using the asynchronous technology of NexoWeb, getting real-time push-pull trading information. And it's just, there's no server refreshes. Everyone at different locations around the world are having the real time. So basically, if you want to look at a real financial services historical note, this is truly the end of arbitrage, because there is no difference between what a person sees and what a person is buying and selling.
Isn't that beautiful? What an interesting inflection point. So technology sometimes can alter history. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not just hype. There is a historical moment. That's what I've never heard that before.
Yes.
Rob. Technical question. Okay, we're not going to chide you for calling Flash developers scripters, although we might offline. This is really not the same question another way, but I'm still now curious. I'm getting like almost a disconnect. I'm hearing from Charles, if I was a developer, I want to go and be a developer. We all know I'm a terrible layman. But I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a time to be, I need to learn programming. I'm going to buy Yakov Fane's book for beginners for children, and I'm going to become an OO. What about the hierarchy of that? And I said before, not likely is Java dev. What I mean is, I'm hearing people involved with Ajax say, it's great, it's freeing us up from object orientation. You see, that was all just bogging us down. Complexity. That's not the whole story, I think.
No, it's definitely not the whole story.
So try and unpack that for us. Where does Ajax sit in that? Do we have to be defensive about it?
Actually, now with Ajax, more than ever, you need to be aware of object-oriented programming.
Right.
And
it's just the opposite of what?
Yeah, it is the opposite. The reason being is that you, as a developer, as an architecture developer, you probably want to develop something robust that actually is completely independent of the presentation layer, which means you need to develop your applications to work with whatever you put on the front end, this being Laszlo, this being Flex, this being Ajax, use HTML through Ajax. All your components have to be completely robust and service-oriented to actually hold any type of front end. So with Ajax coming in, this only makes object-oriented and back-end development even more complicated. They're not more complicated, but you cannot develop it in a traditional fashion way, because procedural programming, which is the old way of doing stuff, will not work with Ajax. Now all the Ajax call need to call objects, and objects need to respond.
So what you're saying, let's just then summarize that. If you're about to apply to a CS course somewhere in America or the world, and you think for some reason that, when course 1 is still teaching you Java, that, oh my God, that must be old hat, I better avoid that place, like no mention of Ajax here at all. This is not the case.
It's definitely
not something you should make a judgment call on.
It's definitely not the case. Actually, Java is making good movement to adopt Ajax, and I particularly use a library called DRW, Dynamic Web Remoting.
Right.
And Java and Ajax work together. They're not they're not competing to each other.
Right. So that's an important message to get across.
Ajax is not going to replace Java. Ajax works together with Java. Ajax is not going to replace Flex or Flash. Ajax works actually in a nice synchrony with Flash and all the rest of the technologies.
But it's still, you see, the running theme of this, I know we said right at the beginning, Renaissance is too strong a word, but the curious thing is that the more you speak, the more I'm emboldened to say, you know what, this is a kind of Renaissance, because you seem to have this, we talk about convergence and it tends to be, wireless convergence, but, let's just use that word. There seems to be a convergence of technologies possible at this moment that you're saying, I'm hearing from Charles that you can get these things implemented. So if you are a startup, let's not leave that thought. If you are a startup, and this is exactly where you are at the moment, you are in the sweet spot. Go for it, my friend. Go for it. That's what you're saying. So there's a strong message.
And the reason why you would use an Adobe Flex or a Laszlo or a NexoWeb would be because you would have the ability to build these enterprise applications from the scratch up with their development capabilities, as opposed to building something in a scripting language, which is much more difficult to manage. You use the Laszlo tags, or if you use Flex tags, you have a greater ability to build quickly in a much more robust way. It's just a fact, as opposed to building an enterprise solution from the ground up when you have an existing infrastructure.
Right. Talking of tags, Rob, you come out of a cold fusion background. Here you are sitting on I was going to call it the Ajax Power Panel, on the RIA Power Panel. Interesting history right there. We talked about Christoph, now with Adobe. You've mentioned Cold Fusion, and it's one of the languages you're working in. Right. How about that? How has Adobe gotten itself to this exact same sweet spot we're talking about startups, and we're talking about giants, and yet it doesn't seem to be a zero-sum game. The one does not eclipse the other. It's like everyone can play. A huge element of Web 2.0 is it would appear that everyone can play. Strange, but is it actually true? You've watched this progression from Cold Fusion to now Flex, Cold Fusion Developers Journal, many articles on Flex, many more to come, all this year, all next year.
Well, Flex is not replacing Cold Fusion, if that's what you mean.
No, I don't mean that. I mean really to attach it that nothing excludes the last one. That's what I'm trying to get across. That Flex, this isn't clear your plate, RA is here, forget everything you know. Right? It's RA is everything you know. That's what I'm hearing.
Now, Cold Fusion, old-fashioned Cold Fusion developers will develop again on a procedural fashion. And now they have to start developing more in an object-oriented fashion, which was introduced on Cold Fusion MX6. After Macromedia actually acquired Alert.
Right.
And now Flex is only the presentation layer again. Flex will not do any backend. Flex will not do any architecture. There's no programming. There's no enterprise programming with Flex. Flex is the front end. It's only the presentation layer. So is Ajax, and Ajax will work fine with Cold Fusion or with any other language. So Adobe is trying to, with all this Adobe acquiring Macromedia, they're going to start pushing more towards Flex, because tag-based programming in XML makes it easier to create actually that presentation layer, and it looks way better, and it's more efficient, it runs faster, it has more capabilities, you can integrate video, but it still needs a back-end solution. And as an Adobe shop, Flex integrates actually great with Cold Fusion.
What would be the Laszlo answer to that, or the NexoWeb answer to that? How are they going to fight? Right? How do they compete with Adobe with that kind of depth?
I don't think that they're really trying to compete. I think that if you look at where Laszlo is going with their Laszlo Life suite and their Laszlo Mail capabilities, and if you look at some of the capabilities that NexoWeb is building into their applet server. It's a different ballgame. It's presenting a continuous user experience for the user, but it's a different. They're going after a different market.
Okay,
they really are. They're going after a different market. Interestingly enough, why is Gartner saying that that NexoWeb is the only one right now able to deliver enterprise banking applications.
And you would agree or not agree?
I would not agree. I would not agree. But I would trust NexoWeb's, the power of the NexoWeb platform within any bank. Absolutely.
Right, but it's not the same as saying it's the only way.
Right.
And you are strongly and confidently expecting that.
My concern is that when we look at this new trend and we say that one company is the be-it-all, end-it-all, and if I have any message, I think that each one of these companies has an appropriate fit given an appropriate need.
Well, if I'm a developer, which direction do I need to go? What kind of learning curves am I facing? What should I learn that I don't already know? Should I try to become an all-around athlete, so to speak, in everything that's being discussed today? Or should I focus right down on something?
As a developer, you probably, my opinion, you want to take a look at Laszlo, you want to take a look at Flex, especially 2.0, which is coming out, because it's compiled completely on the client side. The main problem with Flex 1 and 1.5 is that it requires a huge investment for the company, because the Flex server is heavy, and the minimum license was about $15,000 or $20,000.
Right.
With Flex 2.0, you can develop Flex for less than $1,000 for developers, which actually expands the market for Adobe. You can also look at Flex.
NexoWeb.
NexoWeb. Anything else?
There's a gazillion forms of Ajax out there right now.
Definitely.
If you look at this, there got to be 30 different.
Right, but from the developer's point of view, if you take...
Let's not forget actually XAML.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is the new Microsoft.
Which is in beta.
Well, you just take people at different points in their careers. I just graduated from college. I didn't, obviously, but if you did, which direction should I go? I'm a person with 5 years experience. Now, which direction should I go? Now I'm an older person. I got 20 years of experience. I can still learn, but you can't teach me anything. Which direction should I go? Where is really the money going to be made? Not by the software companies, not by the customers, but by the individual scripters, programmers.
That Microsoft, unfortunately, always penetrates the market and does what they want to do. And with XAML, Windows Vista, and Athlon, they're definitely gonna be a big player on the RIA and Web 2.0.
I think, though, a possible answer to your question would be, you can look at it from a developer's point of view, and again, I'm going to go back to one of the keystone points that I have is that this is not about technology. You can have the best developer out there, but unless they understand three-dimensional user experience, it's going to fail. So this is also about information architects. Information architects need to rethink user experience. Business people at corporations need to look at the different touch points within their organization and how can they coalesce these touch points into a portal-like web experience that abstracts different components of their business process and brings them to bear with the user experience. So it's not just about the developer; it's about the business person.
Right.
As you said,
but is that up to the developer, or is that up to the chief architect of that company to do?
Well, I think that's one of the problems with the industry today is that you have technologists that are shaping the direction of companies. You have marketing people are trying, and they need to speak much more closely, be more aligned in terms of the business process.
There's no general answer, or maybe Jeremy has one specific answer to help.
Gazillions of flavors of Ajax. What do I have in my hand?
That's a book.
The appendix C of that book has, I think, about 42 different versions of
650 pages, no less.
Go to appendix C.
Ajax, and we'll do that momentarily. I just wanted to tell you that if you are viewing this,
I know, but
and on March the 13th, you're free. You need to book yourself in. Rob is teaching at it on my left here at our Ajax seminar, Real World Ajax, and this book will be immediately presented to you if you're somebody who's coming. If you scoot on over to ajaxseminar.com today and sign up, this will be the first thing you get as you walk in the New York hotel that we're doing this at. We're doing it again on the West Coast, which is a completely new announcement. Look out for that. That'll be coming up.
And the appendix is worth the price.
Now, you're saying I should go to Appendix C, so talk amongst ourselves while we do exactly that. Appendix C, quite rightly, as Charles says, lists I know there's more flavors of
Dozens and
Ajax,
dozens.
but Ajax frameworks and libraries, and I can tell you that you'll need page 620. Ajax is still on the A's, Bindos. I have heard of some of these. Echo 2, Jack B, Guy, Pragmatic Objects, Scriptacular. Some great names.
I like
here in
that
the Ajax
Scriptacular.
space. X Desktop. We talked about the maybe X Internet was one of the early names.
Ruby on Rails,
Ruby on Rails
another
is
one.
How can you not want this book, Ajax in Action? It is by Dave Crane, who also is going to be at the Ajax seminar.
Is there a learning curve involved
It's
here,
a
though?
start.
I mean, for people that are our audience is very savvy, and they're not going to have a problem with this book. What sort of learning curve are they going to face as they dive down and try to learn all of these different
Well,
flavors?
as Charles mentioned, the major learning curve is not actually about the technology. It's about how to use the technology to change philosophy.
What needs to be solved? Be aware of the user needs, be aware of the client needs. Don't just go blindly down some road.
The technology of Ajax is actually rather simple.
Right.
As I said before, it's been around for years.
Right.
If you know JavaScript and you know some server-side language, you can do Ajax. Period. That's it.
So
It's as simple as that.
Learn the skills, but then you have to learn how to play the game. We'll go to a tired sports analogy here, but you got to go out and learn how to play the game.
And going back to a question that Jeremy had earlier, why has this not been become part of the mainstream sooner? It's actually mind-boggling to me, because when anyone sees some of these demos or these prototypes and juxtaposes them,
They just switch it up.
it's like, why would we?
Right.
You know, going back to I believe it's in Business 2.0, Ralph Needleman, about 3.5 years ago, he described the current world of HTML as a usability disaster. You know, that it's, you know, and everyone knows what the web was like about 3 or 4 years ago. You go to get an application for a plane ticket. If you were confused on page 3 about what you put, you have to start all over.
Right.
Here you can have, you know, these applications running concurrently. You could manage your banking account. You could fill out an application. You could actually use voice over internet protocol to talk to someone. You could have an instant message box at the same time and have a music clip going on at the same time. Now, would that be, again, a great user experience? No, but the possibilities of that are there, and to have that ordered in a great what I call ecosystem, because really this is about creating an ecosystem of user experience possibilities.
Okay. That is what I think should be the final word for this RA Power Panel. Charles Files, I want to thank you for coming not so far from Round Arch to talk with us and to introduce us to some of the other aspects than Ajax. Thank you, Rob Gonda from Geelan Group, for representing Ajax. I know, and we've seen, and viewers have seen, that you're not a one-stop solution. We've unpacked that, but thank you nonetheless for helping unpack why Ajax is becoming so popular. Thank you, Roger, as ever, for trying to get out of these two guys a kind of roadmap, which is really all we're seeking to do here, is give a roadmap to viewers, whoever they may be, and wherever they may be watching. Thank you so much for joining us on the RIA Power Panels with Jeremy Geelan for SYS-CON TV. Saying goodbye.